This is the second part of our interview today with my dad, Joseph Levine. To the camera's left, we have my daughter Heather Brianna. To our right, we have Jonathan Phillip. And we're going to pick up more or less from where we left off, but in the intermission we had my father was making some reflections that I'd like to hear him just review with us on camera. He had some ideas of some of the things that were so key in his success that he wants to maybe tell us a little bit more about.
Well, to continue the conversation that we had inside, what I was trying to emphasize is that I was fortunate, especially with my parents, that I met people outside of my own small circle, and had no trouble adapting to the surroundings. What I'm trying to emphasize is that in hiring people in my business, by virtue of being lucky enough to be working for the Air Force, you learn some supervisory ability. I always had in any job, I came into it in the Air Force, and I had either mechanics, squadrons, and if you were not prepared under the pressure of both time and the situation, you spent a lot of extra time trying to understand all of the good points and foibles of the characters that you're directing. And as I said earlier, when we were off camera, the ability to judge people so that in most cases you hire the proper person, but if he wasn't perfect, you understood something about him or her that you had no trouble adapting to. And in all my 40 years of business, I never literally had to fire anybody more than a couple of people who were still in their trial period. When you get into the Air Force, I certainly wasn't in any position to as an engineering officer, I had mechanics working for me, and some people were better with their hands than others. Others were better with their heads than they were with their hands. And when you're dealing with something that's life and death, the plane taking off, and the pilot is incapable of flying, you're in big trouble. At the same time, if you're responsible for that crew, you got to be sure that the pilot, who's the lead individual, has a crew that you think will successfully perform for them. So if they were in a fight with another airplane, were the gunners in the proper position? Was the plane at the proper altitude? Was the crew ready for the mission? Now, strictly as an engineering officer, you don't think of yourself as being responsible for the personnel, but you are responsible for how the personnel treats the equipment that you supplied them. And I think at a very early stage when I was in the Air Force, it was relatively easy, for me at least, that the crews that were flying the plane, and more importantly from my standpoint, the crews that are maintaining the plane, were not hesitant about saying to me as the lead officer, I have a problem, and not afraid of you in telling you that the problem is a big one or a little one or could be easily fixed if they thought it could, or that maybe that we shouldn't do it at all. Maybe the whole plane had to be grounded. And if you couldn't develop the trust with the parties that were working for you, you were never going to be a successful officer or pilot or mechanic. I think the earlier training in the civilian life will help me no end in the military life. I recall an incident when we were on an island off the coast of the Philippines, and we were on a so-called max mission, fly every available plane that was not grounded for repairs, and one of the sergeants came in, and I was still asleep at the time, and said that one of the planes had taken off in another squadron and had landed in the drink, and they lost 13 guys on board. When I asked him what he thought the cause was, he says, well, I think there was water in the gas. And I asked him, well, did you check our planes? He says, yes, that's the first thing I did, and we've got water in all our tanks too. I said, okay, shut him down, which meant that he had to put his initials into flight book, and meant that the plane was grounded until further notice. Quite frankly, I went back to sleep again. Got a call about 3-4 hours later that I had to go to the airfield. There was an inspection of my planes because I didn't fly them. When I got out there, there were 2 colonels, and they were very careful to show their rank, and said, how could you ground the planes when there was no orders to ground them? You were supposed to fly everything that would fly. I said, the only thing I can't fly is a plane with water in the tank. And they said, how do you know that? I said, well, let's go out to the flight line. And there was 9 planes lining up in a row, and took one of the mess cups that one of the maintenance mechanics had and asked them, which plane would you like me to check for water? So they picked out a plane. We went down there. It was the third engine on one plane. They changed their mind. They decided, no, I want to try this airplane over here. And we get there, and he says, which engine has the water in it? I said, all the gas tanks have water, and they feed every engine. So the only way we can check it is to open up the valve on an individual plane, on the gas tank, right where the engine is. So they said, do it. So I did it. And I passed the cup around to them, and there was gasoline floating on top of the water. And they said, there's gas in the tank. What else do you need? I said, there's water below. They said, how do you know that? I said to them, I'll show you. So I drank about 3 mouthfuls of the solution. Maybe I'm repeating myself. I want to tell you I had diarrhea for 3 days. But the fellows went back to headquarters to McMartha.
Can I ask I want to interrupt just a second. My understanding was these are a tank, right? And so the tank had gas at the top. And so when you drained it out, the water was below. So it drained water into the cup. Is that right? So it was mostly water that you were drinking, but there was still enough gas in it to make you...
Oh, you could see the gas floating on top of it.
So you could still see gas in that cup.
Oh, sure. What I want to say to you is you're giving a reasonable explanation. The gasoline is in big rubber tanks in the wings of the plane.
Right.
And they feed to individual engines. And when the crew is getting a plane ready to fly, it goes out to the plane and checks a sample of the gasoline.
Right.
That's at the lowest point on the engine.
Right.
If he sees water in it, and he can tell just by the way the gasoline is flowing on the top of the water, he doesn't permit the plane to fly. He puts initials in the book, but he'll drain the water off, all of it, even though it's partially mixed with gas, because all of our gasoline came in 55-gallon drums. And some of it was came in from 1,000 miles away and may have been stopped at various other islands and not used, and then just somebody needs gas in the Philippines, they bring it up to them. They need it on Samar, Okinawa, whatever, they bring the gas tank up. So I had enough chutzpah and stupidity simultaneously to drink the gasoline, but the captain, when you went away, when they went on recreation, they said to me, Australia was the place that they went for recreation. So the crew would go away for recreation. Joe, they said, what can I bring you back from Australia? I says, any kind of fresh vegetable, which was unavailable. I mean, I'm asking him for celery in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So they come back, and the guy says to me, I got what you want. I said, well, where the hell is it? He says, you got to come outside. I come outside, and there's 2 big burlap bags. In one bag they had cabbage, and the other bag they had potatoes. So at least it's a vegetable.
One kind of vegetable.
Yeah.
And they didn't say well, they had carbohydrates in it. Right? But what I'm trying to emphasize is that I wasn't afraid to you have to have enough guts, even though I was a captain of the Army at that particular point. If you see something wrong and you don't do it, you literally should be court-martialed. In other words, put it on trial by the crew. What it does is, in case you have contact with other associates in the area, the pilots talk to pilots in the other group, one group or another, and if a group doesn't fly, as we didn't fly that particular day, nobody got hurt in my squad, which is all that counted from my standpoint. The plane that took off and landed in the drink, they lost 13 guys, but there were 8 other planes flying in addition to that one, and they had a successful mission. And what I think, if nothing else, it taught me that when I was in business or was in the Air Force, that if you have enough guts to stand your ground, first of all, it should be something that your guts are not involved in. It's what your head tells you, whether you're doing something right or wrong. Then you don't have to be afraid of it. So later on, when I decided to go into business, and I decided that I wanted to go into this business, my wife at the time was working as a social worker in Newark. And but her mother decided I was a Michiganer. No question.
I thought she was a school teacher then, and then later became a social worker. No,
she was in social work first and then became a teacher. And then she went back into social work years later.
I didn't realize that. Sorry for the interruption.
But what I wanted to say about it is that her mother, when I got into business, thought I was crazy. I gave up a good job designing record changers. I had steady employment and some level of security or whatever somebody at your age, at that particular age, has as far as security goes.
You know, in that sense, I think that they're much more like Heather and Jonathan's mother. You know, it seems like you know, she has that kind of outlook. You know, security is the most important thing.
Yes, but at the time.
But you weren't doing this just as a fly-by-night thing. This wasn't just some, you know.
Well, as I said, I had started this business.
Dad, you were saying something else inside. I just want to interrupt you to get. You were talking about at age 15 that you already were building things in your house.
Right.
What were some of the things that you did in your home? I know you weren't. Didn't you finish the basement downstairs and?
Oh yes, I put in paneling in the whole room. I put in where
This
the
was on
coal
12th
bin
Street.
was, we converted to an oil furnace. I had
What did you do converted to the oil furnace? You converted was it a coal furnace or what?
well, it was a coal furnace to begin with.
My God.
I never. Well,
I still can't believe you guys.
oh well, that's
So the floor was sloped so that the coal would funnel into like the furnace?
No, no. The furnace where we burned coal was on the opposite side of the cellar, and we actually had a wheelbarrow and a shovel. We shoveled the thing and brought the wheelbarrow over to the furnace. But imagine that you could see in your downstairs in your house in the cellar, and you had an outside window there. That was where the coal came in.
So they came in a chute.
They went down a chute.
Well, they had a
Truck comes in.
and he started tilting the back of the truck, and there was a steel chute. There was two sides, and there's a platform, and they were just shooting.
So you had to shovel coal every day and to get heat in the house.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that would heat the water also, or no, the
That would be, well, you had,
or was there
heaters
separate?
in the house were steam.
Pardon me?
You had steam heat
Yeah,
going into your radiators.
gotcha.
Okay, but and out of the furnace they had pipes going to individual radiators in each room.
Gotcha.
Okay, but and there was also baseboard heaters where you had water running around the entire interior of your house, and it was covered with a vertical piece of metal in the front and a little cap on top, and the air came in. The piece of metal in front didn't touch the ground. There was a gap of an inch or two, and the part on top, well, you wanted the air to circulate underneath, and it came out in the room because there was a cover on it.
Right. So you changed it from the coal-fired furnace to an oil-burning furnace,
Right.
and you also paneled the basement,
Oh yeah.
and you built
and
a
the ceiling,
put in a ceiling,
soundproof ceiling.
and you put in and you built a porch.
Well, I built the whole floor in the cellar.
Right.
Okay, but the scene where you see me hammering on that's the porch on the back of the house.
So was that sunroom area that it was like a screened-in area,
It was a screened-in area. Right.
and you put that whole thing in?
Yeah.
We have some pictures of you in that room when you were very little, with Grandma Fanny and.
I think I remember. I mean,
I'll
not
show
that
you
I
those
remember,
pictures.
But I remember the pictures.
Yeah,
I've seen the
yeah,
pictures,
yeah. I didn't know you built that. That was actually one of the nicest parts of that house. It was a very.
The nicest part.
It was a very nice. It really was, because it was very open. It was like our sunroom area.
Yeah, that's
It was
exactly right.
it was
We-
screened in.
We had screens in the summer and.
I remember you
glass.
changing the screens to the glass, or yeah, a very nice part of that house. So, and when you took, was it in high school that you took some examination that said that you had an interest in engineering and in business? Was that in high school, or what? When it was a vocational thing that you took at some point?
I'm trying to think what you're talking about.
An aptitude test. Or something?
Yeah. So either aptitude or interest. And you said that influenced you because it said you were.
It's not an aptitude test, but when maybe they do these things in high school, where they vocational thing, just trying to see what you're.
Yeah, what are you interested in? Anyway, let me come back to the business part, Dad. We were talking before we took a break.
Right.
So, Mom knew these people, the Brotmans, and she introduced you to Sidney Brotman, you went to see his place, Cooper Alloy, in Hillside or Newark?
Well, no, I didn't. I didn't see his place
No.
because they shut the whole operation down.
Okay.
That was a foundry,
Right.
a sand foundry,
Right.
and they had an investment casting division.
Right.
When the war ended,
Right.
they closed that division down,
Right.
and Sidney Brotman was working as a metallurgist for them.
Right.
And when I had started the business,
Right.
your mother knew Sidney Brotman's wife
Right.
socially.
Right.
She met him. So I had met him,
Right.
but he wasn't working for me initially.
No.
During the whole war, he was exempt.
Right. But I'm saying is but he also was doing the same business, I thought, and you went and you saw their operation and you thought you could do certain things better?
No.
I thought you said that he had something where he was...
Arthur, I was working for General Instrument in Elizabeth designing record changers.
Right.
And in the process, I got to know, in the process of designing the record changer, I needed an investment casting.
Right.
And I found a person.
Well, hold on a second. We're going to put it on hold. All right, we're back on camera.
What I'm trying to say is that the advent of Sidney joining the business,
Right.
after I had seen a couple of investment casting operations in the city,
Right.
not in this area, but in the city.
Right.
I think I was saying to you on 45th Street and 8th Avenue, 9th Avenue, near the Port Authority, there was an investment casting plant.
Right.
And I got to know the principals there, etc. And was very intrigued with it. And came back and decided to build a plant
Okay.
and go into that business.
Right.
And my father helped me out with the money.
Right. And where was that first plant? Where was it located?
Newark, about 2 miles from Broad Market, which is the main street,
Right.
off Springfield Avenue,
Okay.
second floor,
And that's where Sidney Brotman joined you there?
Sidney Brotman joined me there.
Right. Okay.
He
You had already made an investment in it.
I had already started the business.
Okay.
And I met him socially.
Right. And then you worked with him, though, for how long? A year or 2 years?
Oh, it must have been about 2 years. And he was a partner in the business.
Right.
And I literally bought him out.
Let's hold again a second.
What was the year then when you decided to start? It was like 47.
Can't remember exactly. I mean, I could look it up. It was in the late 40s.
But there was a part, Dad, where you were saying that Sidney Brotman knew something about metallurgy, but didn't know much about engineering or business or other things.
Yeah.
And you came up with some ideas about some. I wanted to hear. You came up with some ideas about some new ideas about how the kind of equipment that you'd need, or I think you said you went to Canada and you got some furnace or something that was only.
That was later on.
Oh, okay.
It was very much on my own. No, Sidney was involved at Cooper Alloy, which the foundry in Hillside.
Right.
And he was the metallurgist.
Right.
In that. And strictly talking about that phase of the business.
Right.
But that phase of the business wasn't the whole business by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But he at least was in a plant that operated like that.
Right.
And I was learning something from him and injecting my own ideas. And we got along, well, not only in business, but socially too.
Right.
And, but later on, I was progressing from a knowledge standpoint much faster than he was. And
Probably because of your
literally-
engineering background.
excuse me?
Probably because of your engineering background.
And I just felt that it was a wrong, I didn't want a partner anymore.
Right.
So I went to my father and I don't know, I can't remember, but I remember borrowing the money. I can take to the bank in Hillside and show you where I got some money.
So that's, I was sort of wondering, you're 20, you know, it's 40s, you're like 20 something years old.
Right.
And you go to a bank, you say, well, I have an engineer, and I worked for a few years at General Instrument, and then you ask them for however much money.
Right.
Well, how much you were asking the bank for? You said $20,000.
No, I didn't try to borrow that much
No.
money. I got about $5,000
Oh.
from Hillside Bank.
And they said, okay.
Sure. Those days they would take a chance. You know, first of all, did you go to college? Where did you go?
Right.
What did you take up?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they do some background checks on you, and your parents, by the way, they would supply some of the money. I think in that sense, I was lucky that the fellow at the bank was pretty open-minded. He wasn't closed. Insisted that I had taken a full business degree.
It was a local bank.
It was a local bank in Hillside.
And I mean, who did you, when you were starting this, I'm thinking, did you have was there a business plan? Did you say, well, these people are going to buy this thing, or what? I mean,
You were involved. Tell us some of the things that you were doing in this early part of the business.
Can I take a break?
Absolutely. We're going to continue this without Brianna. We're picking up, and you're going to tell us a little bit about what the different things that you were thinking about early on in the business, sales, the things that you were doing in terms of creating a plant.
Arthur, the key to this thing is this. I think I had enough technical knowledge that I wasn't worried about how to make the casting. What really was bothering me was, can I find the business?
Right.
In other words, because I was a new outfit, and how do you walk into the Joe Blow across the street and say, I had a small brochure on a couple of pages, and I brought that along with me, and I said to him, we use the lost wax presses to make castings, and you'd have to go through the whole explanation.
Right.
That's when castings were strictly an unknown.
Right.
And
also, again, you're like still a kid,
and considering my
say,
age, I wasn't 45, and
you're like 20 years old.
Yeah, 20-odd years old.
Yeah.
So.
Did they take
First of
into
all-
account, you think, that you were in the Army, and was that something that
Well,
mattered, or didn't really much matter?
Well, if the conversation was slipped into the right mode, about where did you go to school and
Yeah.
all the rest of this stuff,
Right.
you could get into the fact that
What?
you
Who?
weren't
Yeah,
the
because
Army.
people might want to know, who are you? Right.
Yeah, they want to know. When they would know. For example, people were very fussy in those days. They wanted to know who your banking relationship was. we were with the Hillside Bank.
Oh,
And I had
so
no trouble.
So your people you're selling to wanted to know that you're bank.
Sure.
The bank, I would think, would want to know who you're selling to.
Yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah.
I think Arthur, you get a very fast education that way. And
Well, it was on the job. It was on the job training.
yeah. First of all, the nature of the sell, from my standpoint, was that the big selling point was that we can save you money making on any part that you're machining. If the part has to be machined precisely, you still may be able to make a casting closer to your finished product than you can anything else. The reason that a sand casting is not, which is what
It's much cruder. It sounds like a sand
it's
casting.
much cruder, but you can make bigger parts with it, things like that. But it leaves you with a lot of machining,
Okay.
which is expensive. So if we can make it accurate enough that you do very minimal, maybe you only drill holes in the part, or you clean off surface tight so something seals better. All those things are selling points, and you're still learning while you're selling.
Right.
You know, because you're going into all different.
Is there
sorts
any
of
mistakes that you remember that you made that you were completely, helped you learn something?
Mostly in the construction of the tooling, in the sense that if you don't make the mold easy to extract the wax is close to the size of the metal part that you push the wax into to get the shape. But if you don't make the mold in a way that you can extract the wax from that metal part, it's going to seize up in the wax in the mold itself. So you have to have, in certain molds, you have to have ejector pins to push the wax out. In other words, they go through the side, and there'd be pins on springs that would be flush, smooth with the surface. But when you went to eject the wax, the pins would, in a sense, push it out of the mold for you quicker. Those are, Arthur, it's, how would you put it? It's like teaching a kid to comb his hair, not just all to one side or all to the other, but you have to have a part or something. You understand?
Uh-huh.
But it was a good time. It was an easy sell. It was a new. It was a new item.
Who did you go to?
Yeah, how did you find the people?
How did you figure out who would need you?
Who's going to be buying? Yeah.
Trial and error. For example, one of the first customers I had was Union Carbide. I had them for life. I mean, in all the 40 years of business, I was making stuff for Union Carbide. Or like I showed you the orange juice squeezer that I had at Food Machinery in Florida. I would have never met them except that I visited the plant deliberately. I felt that I had seen oranges being squeezed. And
so you told them.
I had visited a plant where they were, Food Machinery Corporation, where they were making making orange juice. So I said, that was their purpose. And the machine they had this device in it, and they told me who was.
So you wanted to.
And they told me where they bought the equipment, so I went to see the guy.
So you had to sort of, you got to see a cross-section of American manufacturing.
Arthur.
And you probably lowered the price of orange juice. You made orange juice cheaper.
No question, Arthur. Jonathan.
Yeah.
We made 100% of the orange juice squeezes produced by Food Machinery Corporation. I mean, the parts would wear out in time, which was fortunate. We mean that we got repeat business.
Right.
And they didn't wear out because they got dropped on the floor. They wore
They
out.
were just doing this all the time.
All the
Right.
time.
Right.
They would be doing it once every 10 seconds. They would squeeze an orange. And simultaneously, by the way, when the machine closed on the orange, there was a plunger that came up through the center of it. The oranges had to go into the machine with the stem in the position. That was done very carefully. And that would take out the core.
Okay, sure.
So, you know, the crazy part about it, Arthur, the more that the more different things that you made, they gave you leads to other products of a similar nature. You know, there were lemon squeezers, there were grapefruit squeezers. You know, it started with.
You did a lot of stuff for Jenkins Valve, was it?
Oh yeah, we made all the castings for Jenkins Valve.
And this big outfit here in Phillipsburg. Why am I blocking the name? They made turbines, or they made
turbine blades. They made.
I'm blocking the name now.
Steam turbine parts.
Yeah.
Blades.
Yeah. I'm blocking the name now, but it's a big outfit.
Arthur, I think the nicest thing about the whole goddamn thing is this. In going into business is a gamble all the way. Number one on the hit parade, my parents backed me all the way. I mean, I gave up a job designing record changers, lost a wife on account of it because they thought I was crazy. Bryna, you know who Bryna is, don't you?
My dear Bryna, yes.
Bryna backed a truck up to the apartment, and Pessy at that time was pregnant with you about 6 months, and took all the furniture out of the apartment, left me with the bedroom, the bedroom, the bureau, and the 2 end tables.
You have me confused. You were already separated from my mom at the time I was born. I thought you were separated afterward. I wasn't born yet.
You weren't born yet by the time we separated.
I didn't know that. So she moved back with her parents then?
Yeah. No, her parents took her home.
Mm-hmm.
Philip got, Bryna got one of Philip's milk trucks, and they took all the stuff out of the apartment.
You know, she maintained a very high opinion of you her whole life. And,
yeah, I mean, you know, there was no fight between us.
Yeah. So I still remember you telling me some stories, though, about the early days in the business, and you're seeing that there were certain ways that things were being done that you understood that it could be done better with newer equipment.
It was high tech.
Yeah, you were increasing the technology in the whole field. You advanced the technology in the whole business.
Oh, I did a lot of stuff in that direction, Arthur.
Can you tell us about some of it?
best example is wax machines.
Right.
Um, the wax machines that they used to have were like this. You had literally a cylinder of wax. It was poured into something that looked like just a tube. And those cylinders were put into a machine which pushed air out when it wasn't loaded with wax. The front end of it has wax, and then when it comes back, when the cylinder, literally like in an engine of a car,
Right.
when the cylinder gets back to the
It
loading
pulls wax into
point,
it.
it pulls wax into it.
Right.
Okay, it goes.
The wax is
forward.
heated until it's liquid.
Yeah, well, the wax is in a tank. It's heated. It flows into the cylinder.
Right.
And they push that into the mold.
Right.
And then after the wax cools enough that you can open up the mold, you can take the wax out.
Right.
But the field was in its infancy. There were no, in terms of the wax machines, they were in the Stone Age, Arthur. It was done in a classical, old-fashioned classical. There were guys, there was an outfit in Brooklyn that made wax machines. But they couldn't handle an ounce of wax. 2 ounces of wax already, they were in big trouble. That's an exaggeration. From the standpoint, they didn't understand that the mold has to be opened up within a certain period of time. It's a timing device, because if the wax solidifies and you have a pin in it to create a hole, it'll solidify around the pin. And if you extract the pin, you tear the wax. So you've got only a certain fraction of a minute, like 15 seconds or 20 seconds, depending upon the size, diameter, length of it. All of those things have to be taken into consideration. And they were all originally designed by people who had the time, that if the wax took 3 minutes, so what? If it took 1 minute, that was better. But they weren't going to make any equipment to make it faster, and didn't understand how to make that equipment.
Right.
And that was one of the things
So
that I introduced.
you helped design that equipment?
I helped develop all that stuff. I had a wax machine.
So
I was a pioneer. I had a wax machine, Arthur, that the tank, let's say, this was, add another 6 inches all the way around this baby. Tank this high. I had 200 pounds of wax in that machine. It would last 2 weeks.
So you were using the parts that, it was a sort of a bootstrapping process that
Right.
the wax machine was helping you make something that helped you improve the wax machine.
Right.
Exactly. So it's sort of like the story. It's the story of technology, of how we got.
And as I said to you, I was one of the 5 original guys in this field. For example, we used to make pour metal, or excuse me, make metal. If you think about a doorknob, let's say it's made out of a carbon steel. It's the simplest form of steel. It's got iron, and it's got minimum alloys in it. A little bit of silicon, a little bit of manganese, etc. But essentially it's iron. When you get into something like stainless steel, you got 18% chrome, 8% nickel, 2% molybdenum, silicon, other things that makes the stainless steel stainless.
Right.
And rust-proof, and also flexible. In other words, it could be bent and stronger. So if you're in a position to understand that when you add silicon, it makes things harder and stronger. When you add molybdenum, it makes it harder, stronger, and ductile. All those things, etc. I was in a learning curve. I mean, I was spending half my life reading and getting metallurgical courses. I was a mechanical engineer. I wasn't a metallurgist.
Right.
And,
What is
You
it
s-
like?
I'm,
Chemical?
s- I'm sorry. You said you
it's
needed.
chemical engineering too. Sure.
You said you needed to when you were designing the parts, you had to take into account the shrinkage of the wax and the shrinkage of the metal. Depends on there's a few percent that you'd have to allow in dimensions
Sure.
for that shrinkage.
That's correct.
And you learned also the machining. I know. When did you decide to move into to build this? The plant that I knew, that I remember,
Oh, yeah.
was
It was
built
in
when I was built in Springfield. That was around 1954, 1953.
I think it's 53 when I moved there.
Did you have a building and you just fitted it?
You
or
bought a
you actually
building
bought a
and-
building?
The first couple of years I was in business, I was on the second floor of the plant that manufactured hats.
Oh yeah. But
in
they
Newark.
had a space on the second.
Second floor. I then rented space on Chestnut Street in Newark. I had a whole building about 6,000, 7,000 square feet. And I built a plant in Springfield with my father's help, considerable father's help. Financial help.
Did he have a stake in the? He had shares in the.
No, never won. Okay. He was enthusiastic. My mother was sort of neutral, but if my father said it was okay, my mother was in agreement. He had some confidence in me, and I don't think it was misplaced. Something felt Jonathan.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to cut you off, but it's about time for.
Okay.
Stop there.
This was great, and we'll pick it up again sometime. And thank you very much, both of you.